Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be recapping the final day of phase number 1 at the Montreal Major for Rainbow Six Siege. Yes, it is only the second day of phase number 1, but it is the final day, and in the first day we didn't see any teams going home, we didn't see any teams advancing into phase number 2, but after this second day we saw 4 teams advance and 4 teams go home. And you might actually notice that this Chiefs versus Cyclops game hasn't actually happened when I'm recording this first part of the video, but I wanted to get this over with, and then I'll add in that other part at the end of the video. So you're not going to be missing anything, don't worry. So to recap the first day's games really quickly, in case you didn't watch that previous video, if you want a little bit more info on them, feel free to go back and watch that video. Black Dragons beat CL4L 2-1. It was a fairly decisive series for Black Dragons, but CL4L did get a solid win on the second map. G2 took down Cyclops 2-1, but G2, it was looking really scary for them. They got stomped on Bank, and then they had to make a bit of a comeback on Cafe, but then they handled Cyclops on Consulate. Alpha Team versus Falcons. This was a dominant win for Falcons, even if they did somehow lose the second map 8-7. They won 7-1 and 7-0 on the first and third maps. And then Chiefs versus FearX, the only 2-0 of the day. Chiefs won 7-4, 7-4, so a pretty clean victory. Okay, moving on to the new matches. G2 beat Black Dragons, is what we call in the industry a close 2-0, max regulation into max overtime, and G2 actually had to make a pretty tremendous comeback in both maps. Black Dragons on both maps started on defense, and they got 5 rounds, so G2 was down 1-5 on Consulate. They won all 6 of their defenses. They won 6 rounds in a row to close it out. And then on Lair, they, I think, won 5 rounds in a row, because I think Black Dragons went up 6-1. They won their first attacking round. And then, yeah, G2 won 5 defenses, pushed it to overtime, and then they won the 2 out of 3 in overtime. And really strangely, all 3 overtime rounds were won by the attackers, whereas in the rest of the series, almost every round was won by the defenders. Sort of strange there. We had that flip at the very end of things, but that's G2 advancing via the upper bracket. And the MVPs were Doki and Loira, each dropping somewhere around, I think, 17 kills in their respective MVP maps, so good showings by them. Falcons versus Chiefs. This one pains me because originally I did predict Falcons to advance via the upper bracket, so win here. And then their coach wasn't able to make it to the event, and so many people were predicting Chiefs over them, it sort of swayed me, so I should have stuck to my guns, but I didn't. Falcons do win 7-4, 7-0. Extremely dominant phase by them. Maybe they didn't play the absolute top teams, but they went plus 12 in the first series and plus 10 in the second series. So plus 22 over the course of 2 best of 3s is actually pretty crazy. And Robbie was the standout in this series. Probably the MVP for the entire phase if I had to estimate things. MVP of both these maps. And then while it was Hasham, the MVP of both maps that Falcons won here, Robbie wasn't far behind, so phenomenal performance by him in this phase. Let's see if he can keep it up into phase number 2. And then moving on to the lower bracket, Cyclops eliminates CL4L, another close 2-0. CL4L actually only winning 1 fewer round than Black Dragons did up against G2, 7-5. 8-6. Honestly, CL4L probably should have won Nighthaven Labs, but they just let it slip. And I mean, that's just sort of the nature of the thing. They were playing with a substitute. None of their players had major experience, and they're not even a T1 team. And they didn't even have an org backing them. So I think they can go home with their heads held high. Yes, it does really suck to go 0-2. I guess at least they got the 1 map up against Black Dragons. But it is what it is. That's CL4L going home. Black Ray and Shureep, the 2 MVPs. Another MVP notch on the belt of Shureep. Really good phase for him thus far. Alpha Team up against FearX. It was looking kind of scary in the first map for FearX, but they do manage to pull it out in round number 15. And they win 7-3 on Bank. So Alpha Team, they had 2 round 15 maps. One that they won, one that they lost, and they got crushed in all the other maps. They lost 7-3, 7-1, and 7-0 with the really decisive ones coming up against Falcons. And the MVPs there, Nova and Goodboy. And then Black Dragons up against FearX. Winner goes to phase 2. Loser is eliminated. And yeah, it's FearX going home, Black Dragons moving on, but it was really looking scary for them. Consulate went to FearX, and then FearX also went up 4-2 after their defensive half on Cafe, but Cafe being the defensive-sided map that it generally is, Black Dragons get 5, they close it out 7-5, and then we go on to Lair, and it's still looking scary because although Black Dragons get, I think, 3 rounds in a row, I want to say they were up 3-0, FearX gets the next 3, so it's 3-3, only 3 rounds on your defensive half on Lair doesn't feel great. But then Black Dragons, they attacked very well. They only dropped 1 attack and they win the map 7-4. And MVPs were Mephi and Hornetow, but there were actually 3 maps, so I don't know which map is not included here. I assume it's the third map that they just didn't put the MVP for. And finally, Chiefs versus Cyclops goes the way of Chiefs. I thought this was going to be a really quick one, judging based on the very first map, and I don't know why this says 7-4 on Consulate. It was actually a 7-1 in favor of Cyclops. So Chiefs beat down Cyclops really hard on Clubhouse, and then Cyclops beat down Chiefs even harder on Consulate. And then we go to Layer, and it looks like it's going to be really close. It goes 3-3 at the half, but then exactly the same as we saw in the game between Black Dragons and FearX here, where it's 3-3 at the half, and then Black Dragons won 4 attacks and lost 1. The exact same thing happens between Chiefs and Cyclops. Chiefs wins 4 attacks, and they lose 1 to close it out, 7-4. So yeah, that's Chiefs advancing. The MVPs were Tex, Sireneko, and Jigsaw. So Tex and Jigsaw continue to be the MVPs for Chiefs in every single map that they win. So CAG going out a little bit sad. Last major, they made it out of phase 1, and they had a reasonable run in phase number 2. Really close to beating BDS, but they couldn't quite do it. This time, they're not going to get the chance. So yeah, that's G2, Falcons, Chiefs, and Black Dragons advancing. As far as my predictions, I got 2 points for G2 advancing. I got 2 points for Black Dragons advancing, both of them in the correct position. And then I get 1 point for Chiefs advancing in the incorrect position. So had I gone with my original prediction, I would have gotten 6 points rather than 5. I think 5 is still fairly reasonable. It's the same number I got in the predictions for phase number 1 of the last major. That one was maybe even a little bit crazier. I think pretty much the thing I said was going to happen happened though, where G2 advances up here, Black Dragons advances down here, and then these 2 spots are occupied by 2 of Falcons, Chiefs, and CL4L. Maybe the CL4L pick by me was a little bit of a coat pick, but it is what it is. So we lost 3 points. Could have been worse, could have been better. I'm sure there's a lot of people on 6, maybe even 8 points, but you know, we're going to have to keep rolling with it. We're going to do predictions for phase number 2 tomorrow. Let's take a quick look at those matchups. Let's go see what they are here. BDS versus W7M. This is actually a rematch of the grand final of the Esports World Cup we just saw a few months ago. FaZe versus SSG. These guys have played each other a good number of times recently. FaZe have won, I think, all of them, but it usually ends up being really close. Sonics versus Virtus Pro. Secret versus Elevate, Liquid versus G2. This is a bit of a classic matchup. Dark Zero versus Falcons, Scars versus Chiefs. This matchup is kind of whatever, but had Cyclops beat Chiefs to advance to this point, it would have been the 2 Japanese teams playing against each other, which actually happened in the first round of Manchester. So a little bit funny. And then finally, D+ up against Black Dragons. So again, planning to do predictions for phase number 2 tomorrow. And as far as the time frame, don't worry, because as of the time I'm recording this, almost a day and a half, we still have to get in those predictions. And so whenever I do it tomorrow, it should be fine. Just make sure as soon as you watch that video to get in your predictions, whether you go with mine or alter mine in some way or go with something completely different, whatever you want to do. I'm planning to do that tomorrow. Hopefully nothing prevents me from doing that. And I will catch you guys next time.